Good afternoon, everybody. I believe there are some people out there. So if you are here today with me, please put your hello, hola, good evening, good afternoon, whatever it is in the chat. We would love to hear from you. So we're going to get started to honor everybody's time. Welcome to our session. The session today is on ensuring our students are career ready. And we're going to do that by looking at strategies across the community. My name is Shira Wolf-Cohen, and I am a partner at Innovas. Innovas is an education consulting group made up of myself and my two partners, Joanna Hightower and Alicia Wolf. Together, we are providing continuity of learning and inclusive opportunities for all students. And we're doing that by building the capacity of educators, organizations, schools, and families to make innovative and courageous solutions in education. And so I'm excited today to join you. Just to tell you a little bit about Innovas. At Innovas, we offer a wide variety of services. We bring over 30 years of experience in charter school leadership. And so we are excited to work with schools and professional learning, thought partnership, working with families, creating interactive toolkits, and really working to ensure that educators and families have the skills they need for this year and beyond. So who am I? I'm Shira Wolf-Cohen. I spent the past 19 years at an independent charter school in Philadelphia, where I served as a teacher, a dean, a vice principal, and a principal, and that position for the past 6 years. This year, I'm taking a pause from being a direct school leader and working as an educational leader, working with over a dozen schools in Philadelphia and Massachusetts, and hoping to expand that to across the United States. I'm a business owner. I'm a mom. I have a fifth grader who is also learning at home. I am an alumni of Temple University and Lesley University. I sit on the board of the National Youth Leadership Council, and I'm a proud Neubauer Fellow for Principal. So I'm very excited to be here. I want to tell you a little bit about my first job. I think it will help to set the tone. And I ask you while I'm talking to also think about your first job and the questions that I have listed here. So my first job was at the Weather Vane. I don't know if anyone remembers that store, but it was a store. It was for young ladies, women, clothing, and I got a job when I was 16 there. When I was 16, I joined the Weather Vane during what was considered the Thanksgiving to holiday rush time. And I got so excited on my first day. I got dressed up. I was ready to go. I had read the manual. I was going to sell those clothes. But when I walked in, I was walked right back to the storage, and I was asked to fold boxes and boxes of clothing. I quickly took a deep breath, recognized that's what I was going to be doing, and started folding. It was about 3 days later that the manager asked me if I wanted to try out the floor. And soon enough, I was on the floor selling, and at the end of the holiday season, they only were able to keep 3 employees. And I end up being one of those. And I was really proud of that. And I wasn't proud because I got hired. I was proud because I allowed myself to be successful in what I didn't think I wanted to do. I didn't want to be in storage. So when I had my first job, I learned about how to persevere. I learned about how sometimes you got to do stuff you don't like to get to the stuff that you want to do. I wish I would have known that it probably wasn't a good idea to spend all the money that I earned on the clothing in there. And as I mentioned, this was absolutely a lifelong experience. And so I want to encourage you to think about your first job, and specifically to think about what you wish you would have known walking into that job, and what's something that you learned. Because all of my conversations with young people surrounding their jobs and careers and future moves and their present, responsibilities all lead to that there's a learning experience within all of them. So I want to make sure that you also have a chance to think about that. And if anyone is willing to, we of course encourage you to put that, if you'd like to share what you learned, into our chat. So here's what we're going to do in the next about 50 minutes. We are going to talk about career education. We're going to explore some approaches to career education. We are going to talk about how to have community-wide involvement. What does it look like on a class level, in a school-wide activities and approaches, and when we involve families and communities? And finally, I'm going to share some websites, resources, all things that are free that you can bring back to your school communities. I'm really hoping by the end you've increased your knowledge, you understand different approaches, and you're actually able to identify strategies that make sense for your school community. So I'm hoping that people wouldn't mind. And so we can do this in two ways. There is a website called menti.com. And what I really want you to think about, and so we don't actually have to use Menti if we don't want, but it would make it so much funner, trust me. I'd love for you to think about when your students graduate high school, what skills do you hope that they have? And so what we'll do is, just for convenience sake and using the chat feature here, I'd love for you to put in the chat, what do you hope your kids have, your students, when if you imagine, even if you're kindergarten, you imagine when they graduate, what characteristics and skills do they have? Do you hope that they have? I'd love for you to put in the chat some of your ideas. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to think and to add, what skills do you hope that our students have when they graduate high school? What do you hope? Please feel free to add that to the chat. Then I'll share with you some of my thoughts. When I graduate, when I have students that graduate, I hope that they have a strong head on their shoulders. I hope that they're confident. I hope that they're caring. I hope they have literacy skills, meaning I hope that they can go out there in the real world and survive in terms of what they can do to be literate. I want them to be problem solvers. I want them to be creative and innovative. I want them to be able to work with other people. And I want them to have resiliency when something doesn't go as planned. And so for me, those things are important when my students graduate, when the students that I work with graduate. And so it's important for you as a school, as a leader, as a school community, to also identify what are those things, those skills, those characteristics that you want students to have when they graduate. So let's talk about what's career education. I think that there's a ton of great information out there. And so today I'm hoping to pull a lot of resources for you to share. But I want to also get on the same page. So what's career education? Career education is helping develop knowledge and skills that help students choose a career. It's being able to evaluate career paths and decide which ones might make sense. It's bringing relevant curriculum to the classroom that encompasses occupations and professions. And it's engaging students in experiences that design to prepare them for the real world. And so when we talk about career education, we have to understand that it's important. It's not just important for our students, although I put a quote up here from some students and some teachers that I have worked with. It's also important for society. When we are preparing students, we are ensuring that our future is bright, and we're preparing them with all of the different skills and hopes that we identified a few minutes ago. We hope that the world is going to be a better place. We're going to share some resources today. One of them is from America Achieves. And I pulled this quote that I want to share with you. It says, "As we look at how to help education strengthen democracy, there's nothing more important given these economic changes than equipping young people and people of all ages with the skills they need to get a good job and a good career in a fast-changing economy. If we don't succeed in adapting the education skills of young people to get a good job and a good career, the very foundations of our democracy are at risk." And I fully agreed with this, that it is our job as educators, as school leaders, as teachers, to also make sure that our students are prepared for post-secondary life. I would actually say that's our most important job. So people might say, well, what does this mean, career education? What is the approach to career education? And so I wanted to share with you a continuum from new ways to work. And I've been referring to this continuum for at least 10 years. This continuum shows us that we can't just jump into saying, hey, students, let's go out and do an internship, right? And tell us what you want to do as a career. We have to help students understand that. One way that we do that is through career awareness, which is stage 1. Within each of these stages, there should be structured learning activities. There should be activities that engage the community. And there should be specific activities that engage students in work. And so in stage 1, it's about career awareness. And it's about learning what is out there, right? We can't ask students what they want to do when they grow up if they don't know what the possibilities is. And quite frankly, we don't know what the possibilities are either. So we have to expose them to everything that we know. The second phase is exploration. This is where students have actually become aware. They have started exploring their interests. And now they've said, I have some clear interests. And so based on that interest, I want to explore different careers that match that interest. And so we go from building awareness of what possibilities are out there, what interests you could have, what careers are even possible, to saying, hey, I'm going to narrow this down a little bit. Maybe I'm looking at the career clusters. Maybe I'm doing a career inventory. But I've narrowed it down so I know what type of career I want to explore further. From there, we talk about preparing, right? I've had a chance to explore careers in science. And I've actually identified that there are 2 or 3 specific careers that I'm interested in. I want to be an ecologist. I want to be a scientist that helps with health services and health sciences, right? Students have narrowed down kind of the fields that they're interested in. And now it's time to prepare. It's time to think about if I get a job, or how do I get a job? What do I need to ensure that I can be successful within this career? And specifically focusing on the skills, the classes, the activities that will help me be successful within that career. And believe it or not, when we do all of these things, we actually end up with students that have a productive future, right? They actually are educated about what's out there. They're aware of what possibilities are there. Their experiences are diverse. They've become skilled through classes, through after-school programs, through job shadowing, through career panels. They're confident. They've been prepared, right? They're stepping into the workforce a step higher than everyone else because they've gone through this process. And they're connected. They're walking into this world not just with their own interests, but they're walking in saying, I know some people in this field. And so when we do these things and we take students through steps of awareness, exploration, preparation, those are the steps that bring us to have students that are ready for post-secondary life. And so in New Ways to Work, when you, if you want to research them more, you actually will learn that they have toolkits for work-based learning. They have some curriculum that is out there. And all of it is based around this framework, which I believe is the strongest framework that's out there. I also ask you, what do you think about at what age we should be starting this? I wonder, is anyone willing to even put in the chat, what age do you think we should be starting career awareness? What do you think? All right. So when I was a school leader, we started in kindergarten. In Pennsylvania, the law says we start this in kindergarten. The standards start in kindergarten. You probably are saying, well, what would you do in kindergarten? I'm going to share some school-based approaches, but I also want to share that in kindergarten, we need to make kids aware of who are community helpers, who are community members. And so we ran a specialty class that was about community helpers. And once a week, a different community helper came in to talk about their careers. We also bought a variety of costumes, and we allowed for students to get dressed up. We took pictures of them. They wrote captions to their pictures and their first set of goals of what type of person they aspired to be. And so it is okay, and it's important that we start with that awareness at such a young grade, and really by understanding community. So there are so many strategies in career education. I wanted to share some of them that really are strategies. I have engaged in all of these, led, facilitated, participated as a young person. And I wanted to share with you. So here's some that are great. And I encourage you, if you'd like to share any additionally in the chat, to please do that. So first and foremost is linking career education specifically with character education and social emotional learning. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in the context of cross-sector competencies, or as some people would like to call them, soft skills, which is, they're actually not so soft. But how do we actually start with understanding student character and building student character, building their self-management skills, their self-awareness skills? Those are things that are important in career education. Bringing in professional guest speakers. Those guest speakers can happen both individually in classrooms, but can also happen as a career panel. One idea is to say, in health sciences, I'm going to bring a variety of different careers together and allow students to hear from all of those people at the same time. There are so many students that say, I want to be a nurse. And then they actually will maybe go learn more and learn, like, I actually hate blood. Well, nursing probably isn't the best job for you if you hate blood, right? So we can do that. And it's important that we don't just bring in the typical careers in health science. We don't want to just bring in the nurses and doctors, right? We want to bring in x-ray technicians. We want to bring in people that take blood. We want to bring in people that are x-ray, be able to do various aspects of the medical careers. So career panels is a great option. Having students go out and job shadow, having them go out in an organized fashion. I'm not talking about students, today you have a day off, have somebody sign off, you shadowed them. I'm talking about an organized experience where you as the school community organize job shadowing, set expectations for students and partners, and send them out for a day, right, as part of their school curriculum. Service learning. So I had mentioned I sit on the board of the National Youth Leadership Council. And the National Youth Leadership Council is one of the largest organizations that really promotes youth voice and leadership among education, among service and community development through service learning. And so service learning is the combination of students both having an opportunity to give back to their curriculum, to their community, and directly learning and building their own skills. And so doing service learning is a great way to encourage career education, career awareness, and exploration. There are a ton of career development software out there. Most prominent people use is Naviance, which also then allows us to track a lot of student progress towards these goals. You can also run a micro society in your school. And people say, well, what does that mean? That means it's like a school-based enterprise, which is right underneath. Our school-based enterprise is like a school-run business, right? I run the school store. We run a coffee shop. We run a tutoring center that costs money, right? The idea that students can run their own business in your school. But also that your school is actually a micro society. Classrooms are micro societies where people have roles and responsibilities, and they have to actually participate and give back, right? And they're held accountable when they don't do that. Similarly to real life. Cross-sector competencies. I'm going to ask you to put an asterisk next to that because we're going to come back in a whole slide on what exactly that is. Other strategies would be entrepreneurship, right? Having students design their own entrepreneurial experiences and helping to lead them through that. Courses, standalone courses, right? You could have an introduction to education class, an introduction to health sciences. You could have computer science classes, right? They can either be standalone classes or they actually can be career pathways, right? Where we actually have a series of health sciences class. So by the end and by the graduation of high school, students have taken a variety of classes to give them foundations in the skills they need for their future major or future career. We want to make sure that there is direct connections to content areas so that teachers should be making direct connections to their content. It is one of the hugest things for students is that they can see real life application. And so not only seeing real life application, but real life application in their future is even more important. We want students to have post-secondary exposure, right? This is not just about college. I understand that there are many schools that are focusing on college, but not every student is going to be successful in college. And what we want them to be is successful, productive, contributing citizens. And so how do we get them to do that? Is we expose them to post-secondary experiences beyond just going to college. We expose them to so many, whether those are AmeriCorps programs or whether those are apprenticeships, right? There's so many different pathways to success. We want them to take career inventories. I mentioned Naviance as one software that will allow you to do career inventories, but there are tons of them. One of my favorites is called Easy Career Inventory. There's actually 2 forms, which I like. It allowed me to purchase 2 different forms and differentiate the forms that I gave to students. So some students who might not be on high reading levels, I didn't want them to struggle through the content. I wanted them to feel concrete in the content and confident so that they could tap into their interests. And so I bought the same inventory, but 2 different almost reading levels, which allowed us to ensure every student was successful. These inventories allow students to explore their interests, allow them to align to the career clusters. So it really the ones I would purchase are from basically research-based practices. You want to establish advisories, homerooms, advisories, times where students connect with a specific adult in the school and they know who that adult is. It doesn't have to be teachers. The schools that are doing advisory in the most successful way have everybody. Their nurses, their administration, the student support service people. Everybody is contributing and everyone has a small group of students. Role playing. Having students play the part. And you might be saying, well, older kids might be too old for that. But let me tell you, they're not. My 9th graders, we used to take them through a process of after they were gone through the awareness phase, they then went on to kind of really digging into a career of interest. And part of what they had to do was put on a career fair as a class for younger students where they had to play the part. They had to role play for 8 hours what they were doing, dressing, talking, using the language, right? Answering questions as if they were that career. And so role playing doesn't just have to be a simple scenario. It could be an artifact of a longer project. Finally, we need them to do career planning. That means goal setting, visioning, making sure that they know what they can do. And finally, personal life skills, right? We need them to know how to budget. We need them to know how to save. We need them to know how to set up for life's successes. And so in order to do that, we actually have to have a curriculum that allows us to do that and teachers that identify within their curriculum when they're pointing out and enhancing on those personal skills. I want to encourage you again in the chat, if you would like to add any comments, you have another strategy that you use, please add them in. I'm not the sole expert on this. I know that other people are here today that have really great experiences as well. So what are some entry points, right? You might be sitting and watching this and saying, okay, this is all great. These are all great strategies, but like, how do I start? And so I wanted to share some what I consider like on-ramps or entry points for career education. So things you might want to consider. You might want to consider state level requirements, right? For example, in Pennsylvania, we have Pennsylvania's Future Ready Index. And in the Future Ready Index, it actually says that students need to be completing a career development portfolio. And every year they need to have 2 artifacts that goes in there. And we actually have to do reporting on that several times, right? So what are those state level requirements that can help you to build your program? What are the curriculum standards? In Pennsylvania, again, where I'm from, we have Pennsylvania standards for career education and work. What does your state have? In our state, it outlines very clearly in 3rd grade, in 5th grade, in 8th grade, what it looks like to be successful in career education. So we want to look at those curriculum standards that are made available for us. Most of the time, counselors are the only ones that are actually reviewing and viewing these. And so it's really going to be important for our teachers to be on board. Other entry points might be a special school-wide event. Maybe you already have a school-wide service day, right? Happens once a year. How do you incorporate career development into school-wide events? Grade level traditions, right? Might be that in 4th grade, in the 4th grade where I was, they had a famous American project, right? And each year, the teachers identified a specific theme. And students had to learn about individuals within that theme. So one year was STEM, for example. And they had to learn about profession and professionals within that, and they actually had to become like a wax museum, right? And take on that part, another way of role playing. And so what grade level traditions can you infuse? It went from just wax museum of famous Americans to wax museum of famous Americans that are from STEM, famous women in health sciences, right? Each one was a little bit different. And so what are those grade level traditions, and then how can we infuse career development? What are staff interests, right? What I didn't even think about agriculture and as something that would be a focus for students until I had a staff member that was very interested in gardening and landscaping, and recognized that there was a plot of land behind the school that she could work with students on to redesign and to build. And so all of a sudden, we have students who are garden interns and building, designing landscape and measurements and working with companies to determine what costs are going to be, right? All these amazing things that happen from staff interest. Student work demands. I actually added that this morning. I think especially this year, we have students that have work demands. We have students, especially in the secondary and high school, that their families may have to stay home, parents might have to stay home, and they're the ones going to work. How do we make it that what they're doing in school is connected to that? And so your entry point might actually be student work demands. Your entry point might be a community partner that comes to you and says, like I had one that came and said, I'd like to hire 10 of your students. How do you want to do that? And I said, well, that sounds to me like a great opportunity. And it sounds to me like it gives us an opportunity to do some curriculum ahead of time to prepare them, and then to allow you to come on site and do some in-school and one-to-one interviews with students to identify who you want, right? So it became part of the curriculum and become part of the annual curriculum. Counseling initiatives. I said this before. I think that career education oftentimes falls in the lap of guidance counselors. And I want to be clear that guidance counselors are not the only ones who should be thinking about career education. Career education is everybody's concern. And so we want to make sure that while there are counseling initiatives, that they become initiatives that other people join, very similarly to how we have many teacher initiatives that counselors might join. And finally, a school or community strategic plan. Maybe your school has a strategic plan. Maybe your school has recently done a graduation profile. And maybe that's the on-ramp to say, based off of what we've visioned and what we've designed, we're actually going to implement certain aspects of career development. And so when we think about how we get to this place, how do we get to career development, how do we get to do these strategies, it's really important that we don't jump all in. It's important that we identify some of these entry points that make sense for our own individual school community. So I've said this a few times, promoting cross-sector competencies. I just want you to think about that term for a while. Cross-sector competencies. These are skills that are transferable across all areas, across all industries, across all courses, across all interactions. We used to call them soft skills. That's not how we refer them anymore. These are hard skills we need kids to have. We need kids to be able to have skills that help them succeed no matter what their career path, no matter what their post-secondary experience is. What helps them to be successful in our classrooms also helps them to be successful in the real world. Here are some things that are really great and are a great resource for you. So I included in here, through America Achieves, they wrote a report on how we actually focus on cross-sector competencies, how we identify them, how we make sure we know which ones we want to do, how we ensure that there is actually a need there. And so I thought that was a really great resource to have. And so I understand I should be able to send anybody that wants the slide deck, and therefore you'll have it. And you'll be able to directly link to it. So some cross-sector competencies, right? Digital literacy, interpersonal skills. We want students to be able to collaborate with others. We want them to have creation in them and be able to be creative and think outside the lines. And we also want them to be innovative, right, about their thinking. We want them to be able to think through problems and do that with logical reasoning. We want them to be able to actually craft an argument and critically think through issues. We want them to have problem sensitivity, right? We want them to understand, be empathetic. We want them to understand perspectives. We want them to be able to help people come to consensus. We want them to be able to persevere and have that grit. Like when things get tough, when I was walked into that back storage area, I actually wanted to turn around and run out. But I was able to take a deep breath, decide that I was going to persevere through that. And I actually did it with integrity. When people came in the back, I smiled at them. I asked them how they were. I think the managers noticed that. It's probably why they moved me out onto the floor. And then last, but definitely not least, we want them to be self-aware. I want students to know who they are. I want them to be confident in that. I want them to recognize their place in society, what culture they bring to the table, who they identify with, and how they identify. And so I think that all of these things are important. And it's increasingly important that we focus on these skills. And so when we talk about career readiness, career development, we need to recognize it's not just about having kids know what careers they want to have. It's not just about having students know about what careers are out there. It's about them saying it doesn't, regardless of what career I choose, I can be successful in these areas. I can make sure that I give opportunities for students to be creative, for students to think through problems I put in front of them, to put in front of them rigorous materials that allow them to struggle and persevere through. These are cross-sector competencies that, again, no matter which class they're in, no matter which program, no matter which career they're going to, these things are important. So I want to talk about, then the second half of this session is going to be about teacher moves, school moves, and moves for families and communities, right, to ensure that this is successful. And how do we as schools make sure we can engage each of our stakeholders in ensuring our students are ready for post-secondary success? So I want to share that with you. And then I want to share a bunch of free resources around career development that I think you'll find useful. I see a few more people joined us. I would want to again encourage you to please use the chat. I am not the sole expert, as I mentioned on this. I have over 20 years experience in career development, both in Massachusetts and Pennsylvania. But all this comes from experience, which means that you all come to the table with experience too. So as I start to talk through these, if you'd like to share, please add that into the chat. Okay, so teacher moves. What can teachers do? This is focused on teachers, right? So teachers, real life application of the content. I think that goes without saying. We strive for that every day, but it's even more important so that our students understand the connections to how it applies to their future. Highlight professions related to the content, right? If you are learning about if you're learning about the ocean, you're learning about science and scientists, talk about biologists. If you are learning about writing persuasive essays in English class, teach them about marketing, right? And publicists and people that would have to use lawyers, right? Everybody that has to use these skills. Bring in guest speakers. Even in this, I would say not even in, and most importantly, in this remote world that we're in right now. Speakers are so willing to come to class. It's so much easier to bring a professional to your class for 15 minutes through Zoom or to help you record something than to ask them to dedicate a half a day with traveling and visiting and all of that stuff, right? Even my third grade teacher last year was teaching about genetics and had a genetic scientist that happened to be a parent and did a Q&A. The students submitted the questions. The teacher got the scientist on the phone and on the Zoom one evening, did a Q&A with the student questions, right? This question is coming from Shira and she wants to know this. And the scientist answered. And that became part of his lesson, right? And so how do we bring guest speakers in? How do we hold students accountable? I want to say that, like, our job is to hold students accountable. In the real world, students are held accountable. With a student I tutor on the side today, I even said to her, if your mom chooses she's too tired to go to work, what happens, right? Like, can she just not go? Can she not call? Can she lie about it? Our students need to be held accountable for their behavior and what they're doing as well. We want to integrate intentional mini lessons and reflections on those cross-sector competencies. I'm not saying you need to buy a curriculum on creativity. I'm saying that you need to work with teachers to identify moves for their classroom. So when they are promoting creativity, they're pausing to identify it as creativity and to give students a chance to self-reflect. We want to have students participate in experiential activities and lessons. Get them out of the classroom. You can get them out of the classroom super easily in Zoom, right? We can take them across the world. So have them experience what it's like to be a biologist, right? To be a writer. Have them experience that. Model those cross-sector competencies. Not just teach them, but model them yourself. Right? And sometimes even narrate them. Sometimes I find myself that if I'm approached with a sticky situation and I'm in front of students, I might model my thinking. And so we want to encourage teachers to model their thinking. We also want to create roles and responsibilities in the classroom for students, right? We want them to know this is your job. Your responsibility is this. We also want them to know that they actually have roles within the community, right? So maybe they're the person that is responsible for making sure that everyone's cleaned off their desk or that the board is wiped off at the end of the day, right? Like, what are those jobs? And I know that seems simple, but in the younger grades especially, that is one of us. When students talk about their first job, they're going to talk about being the pencil sharpener, right? We want to encourage visioning and goal setting. You know those old school vision boards? I know when I was an adolescent, I had some vision boards. I got all old magazines, cut stuff out, and I visioned about being a teacher, believe it or not, right? And so how do we get our own students to vision? What did they vision for themselves in the future? How do we have them exposed to higher education institutions? For the past few years, I have engaged 6th, 7th, and 8th graders in visiting 4 post-secondary campuses throughout the summer, right? And so part of their experience is visiting 4 campuses in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And we don't just visit universities, we visit community colleges, we visit a technical institute. So there's a lot of exposure that's important that we have. We want to map out career paths, right? If a student is like, we've been through awareness, right? They are starting to really kind of get exposed and now they're ready for preparation. We actually need to map out what it takes, right? The kid that says they want to be a dentist, they should know how many years of education it will take, right? And so we have to make sure that we're doing that. And then we share personal experiences. Share how you got here. Share what your first job was like. Share maybe something you learned from a job that you didn't like. Those things are teacher moves for the classroom that are not get another curriculum that you have to teach. Okay, I want to be clear about that. Teachers don't have to get another curriculum to incorporate career development in the classroom and have teacher moves. They have to keep these things in mind and tap into them when the opportunity arises. Again, I want to encourage you, if you have any ideas you want to share into the chat, please share your ideas. I'm putting that in the chat. Sometimes I wonder if this thing even is working. Okay. So we'll chat that. All right. So that's teacher, right? Teachers in the classroom, their responsibility, their 4 walls or Zoom or whatever, right? Now let's talk about school-wide. And this is actually an infographic you'll have access to. But we need to have some considerations for school-wide success. And this, to me, is the leader's responsibility. So if you're a leader and you're here right now, these are the things that you have to figure out how it's going to happen in your school community. So first is creating a plan. We need to create a plan of what career development and career education looks like in our school. We can't just say, everybody, it's our job, let's do career education. We need to decide, this is what happens in K-5 or in each grade, this is what happens in 6th or 8th, this is what happens in 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. It is up to us to help decide and help formulate what that looks like. We want to make sure that everyone knows the requirements. So in Pennsylvania, I mentioned there are specific requirements. I mentioned that students have to have artifacts and a portfolio every year from kindergarten through 12th grade. I didn't mention that they also have to have a career plan in 8th grade and 11th grade, and they have to actually do a work-based learning project. So either career shadowing or service learning or an internship by the end of 12th grade. Those are the requirements in Pennsylvania. And so whatever your state is, you need to find out what those requirements are. And you need to make sure that people know, right? That people know. The teachers know what the requirements are. The students know. The families know. It's your job to communicate that. Also, as a leader, it's our job to empower counselors. Empower them. One of the things I did with my counselors, I said, you know how teachers have their benchmark data for reading and math that they own? The data on career development and social emotional learning is your data to own. Obviously, you have to have data points in order to have them own it, but we did, right? We used a program called Panorama Education that allowed us to own that data. We also had Naviance. We want to make sure that there's someone responsible for coordinating and reporting, right? So if you have requirements, you're required to report to the state, make sure you have someone who's identified to do that. Make it a school-wide initiative. Again, this is not about the counselors. This is not about you as a principal. This is not about one or two teachers. This is a school-wide initiative. And so sometimes that means coming up with a slogan or having a logo that goes with it. But we want to make sure that everyone knows that career development and making sure kids are ready for post-secondary life is a school-wide initiative. Expose teachers. One of the things I mentioned before is that there in Pennsylvania, there's the career education and work standards, and it's kind of the standards that the counselors own. There's so many teachers that have never seen those standards. It is absolutely crucial that we are exposing teachers to the standards as well. Teachers should know what we are doing to prepare students for careers. They should know what's expected. They should know that these are standards as much as they have standards for reading and math. We need to make sure that we're focusing on cross-cutting competencies. One thing I heard a school say is that they actually had one a month that they focused on, and not that they didn't do others, but like September was creativity, right? And so there was school-wide activities, there was communications to families, there was lessons all around creativity. And so you have to decide how you're going to do that, which leads to scheduling. If you say we're going to do career education and you're just going to expect that it happens, it's not going to. You have to decide. You have to say, especially for school-wide events, once a month on the last Wednesday of the month, we're actually going to have a career-related assembly. Or we're going to set aside time every fourth advisory to have a conversation about careers, right? There has to be some framework for scheduling. There also needs to have buy-in, which means that all these other things, right? The scheduling, the making it a school-wide initiative, creating the plan needs buy-in from teachers and community members. And so by having them participate in those things, that's one of the ways that we do that. And finally, curriculum resources. Notice I'm not saying buy a curriculum. I'm saying curriculum resources. Teachers need to have access. Teachers need to know, hey, I'm looking to promote creativity. And so I'm actually here's some ideas. They might need to know, hey, I'm teaching about biology, right? And I want to teach about that biologist. And they might need a curriculum that helps them to learn more about biology and biologists and how they get there and what the careers are and what their salaries are and those sort of things, right? And so it's going to be up to us as leaders to make sure that we have put in place all of these things so that teachers can do their moves, because teachers can do their moves on their own. But if there's no school-wide plan, it won't have the same impact. And lastly, let's talk about family involvement before I share some resources. So family involvement. Family involvement absolutely is something we need to do with. I do see in the chat, I will absolutely be willing to share this presentation. I'm not sure if there's a way I get to upload it. I think I can send it to Violet to upload. But if you also put your email address in the chat, I will also share a link to a quick form where you can join our mailing list. I will absolutely make sure that you have this presentation. So family involvement. Again, we can't do this alone, right? This is about families too. We need to find out what skills and careers our parents have. That was one of the best inventories I did, was learning about what skills parents had. Invite them to share their careers and skills within the school. Maybe that's joining a career panel. Maybe that's coming as a guest speaker, right? That depends. But have parents and guardians and family members share that. Collaborate with families and students on goal setting. I think that's really important. I think it's important for us to understand how we can work together with our families. We want our families to feel like we're partners. We also want to support and advocate for our students, right? So if we have a student that has certain aspirations and their family doesn't agree with that, right, we have to determine what our role is in being their advocates. But we want to collaborate with families and students on that goal setting. We want to embrace family businesses, right? At my school, we used to always buy pizza from the family that had the pizza shop. And when it was time for me to purchase some teacher appreciation gifts, I reached out to one of the artists who was a family member of one of our students, right? So I think we have to embrace them, both in that way where we partner with them, but also as host sites for internships, job shadowing. If their student goes to your school, the likelihood that they're going to treat the students you send there with respect and as if they were their own kids is so high. And so we want to make sure that we're doing that. We also want them to participate in a career fair, right? You can host a career fair. You have enough careers in your families to bring them in and host your own career fair. We want to encourage our families to give students responsibilities at home. Similarly to how we build a micro society, they have responsibilities. We want them to do that. We want to have ongoing communication with families about our career development. And I want to just say it shouldn't just be in one way, right? We need to communicate with families verbally, visually, and through recordings, through videos, through newsletters, through social media posts, lots of different ways. And then finally, we want to hold parent and guardian information sessions to keep them in the loop, right? When we have teachers having moves in their classroom and we have leaders making sure across the school there's certain messaging and framework set up, and then we work to really reach out into the school family community to gain partnership, we really start to build a system that supports students in being career ready. What I want to do next is I want to share with you some resources in our last 15 minutes. And so we will go somewhat fast, but notice that if you do want the PowerPoint, the Google Slides, which has all of this information, all the clickable links, just put it in the chat and I will happily copy your email so that I can do that. All right. So first and foremost is Career One Stop. Career One Stop is an online source of career exploration, jobs, training information, all of those sort of things. It is free, which is amazing, absolutely free. And things you can do on here would be career assessments, would be there's databases with statistics. There's you can find current employment opportunities. You can connect to local resources. And there's actually a toolkit for job coaches and professionals supporting career exploration activities. So for us educators. You can use Career One Stop, right? You can use it for things like, and I included here ideas in remote learning and in class, right? You can use it for a web quest. You can use it for starting a career portfolio. And then when you get this, there'll actually be some linked activities of when we've used this, when I have used this with staff and students. The second resource I want to share is the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics has a K-12 site, right? Specifically for us. In the K-12 site, it has, again, career assessments, career databases. It has, it's the educational arm of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, right? So it has career cluster, quick links. It has games and quizzes. It has videos, lessons, right? Just for us in K-12. And so some ways you might use this is you might have them researching vocabulary, right? So there's online games that will help them with vocabulary. We might have them do a exploration based on career cluster. We actually might have them do research to pull statistics on different careers and create some sort of graphic organizer, right? There's a lot of different ways that we can use this resource. The third one I want to share is kind of like I call it Life. I don't know if anybody has ever played this before, but Life, you can be played online through a a game called Play Spent. There's one called Play Spent and one called Claim Your Future. Play Spent is like takes students through everything from picking a job to having to pay their bills to having to run into emergencies, right? And so students can take their own pathways. It's more about life skills. And then Claim Your Fame is very much like life. And so again, both of these are free. They have students demonstrate life skills. They have them work on those cross-sector competencies, and it helps them understand how their daily choices impact their life. There are a bunch of different ways that you can use this, right? You can have them simply play it, but you also can have them write reflections on it. You can have them play in teams. You can have them have to rationalize their decisions. You can have them do research between each question, right? So there's lots of different ways that you can structure it. And the last resource I wanted to share is called Candid Careers. I liked this one because sometimes it's hard to get guest speakers for certain careers. Candid Careers is a website. They have a free section, which has free video samples, and it's a library of pre-recorded videos from various professions on career-related topics. Everything from how do we everything on how do I get a job in my field to understanding what a day in the life is, what is the education I had to get here, and not videos made by teachers, but videos made by actual career professionals. And so you can get a license for this for your school, but there's a whole section that has probably like 40 or 50 videos that's all free. Right. And so you could do this in so many ways. I've had students do mock interviews where they create interview questions and then I give them a set of videos they can use to answer them. There's a lot you can actually plan out. I'm a math teacher, and based off of my subtopics, I'm going to integrate these videos throughout the year, right? So that I'm consistently tapping into that. And so I think teachers can use this in their own creative ways. And lastly, I have a ton of other resources that you'll be able to click through here. One of my favorites for K-8 is called Razi Learning, and it's separated by career, subject, grade, and it's full lesson plans, right? So if my teachers were teaching on different types of animals, they would go and find a lesson on being a zoologist, right? And incorporate that. And so there's some great ones here. Razi Learning, Khan Academy, which is great, but you didn't know Khan Academy has a whole career section. Quest for Success is a program for middle school students, a full-blown curriculum that's free. PBS Media and PBS Learning Media has some great resources. I included links to those databases and, again, those games. So some of these are repeats of what I had already shared, but I wanted to add some other ones in here because I think oftentimes people think they need to purchase a curriculum, and really you don't. There's so many free resources that are out there. So we're wrapping up our time. I have really enjoyed having you all on the session. And we at Innovas we're actually, like I said, we're working with 12 schools right now that have current contracts in Massachusetts and Pennsylvania. But we also are continuing to do work throughout the country with new schools. We always love to hear feedback, recognizing that, quite frankly, this session was not, didn't have a lot of the interactive features we would regularly do. But I have really appreciated you all spending your time with me tonight. I put a link to a quick survey that will allow you to just, again, if you'd like to join our mailing list. I do see that there are a few emails here. I did copy those down, so I have those. But I want to thank you for spending some time with us. We do have a few minutes. So if anyone has a question they'd like for me to address, I'm happy to address that. You can just put it right into the chat. Awesome. And please know that if you did give me your email, I will absolutely be sure to drop you links to the information shared tonight. I will send that out in just a little bit. And if you're not doing anything in the next hour, please join us for game evening from 5 to 6. We're having a virtual happy hour and game night. So it would be great to see anybody there. Awesome. So I'll be here for the next few minutes if you have any questions. Otherwise, it was great to spend time with you all tonight, and I will look forward to sending you the information. I guess it's tonight for me, but not for all of you. All right. anybody has any questions, feel free to add it in the chat. I will certainly take care of that. Awesome. All right. Thank you all so much for coming, and I'll reach out to those of you that gave your email this evening. Have a great night. Take care.